The theme is faith and entertainment. Since the time of the apostles, the church has sought to proclaim the gospel through the culture. Today, popular culture is shaped by mass media, film, television, radio, and the internet. Yet often these media proclaim messages that conflict with gospel values and present a disordered understanding of what it is to be human. How can faithful Catholics overcome those challenges and work to proclaim Christ through the entertainment industry? That is the question we're addressing today. And how can you and I, as Catholic consumers of media, learn to discern their messages? Our moderator of the panel is from Vancouver, Canada, originally. She did graduate studies at the Salesian Pontifical University in Rome and trained with the Catholic News Service's Rome Bureau. In 2008, she made the leap from print to television and joined the team at Salt and Light Television in Toronto, Canada. In 2010, Alicia made a return to the Eternal City where she was assigned to be Salt and Light's first Vatican correspondent. She has also been working for the English content section of World Youth Day here since January. Please warmly welcome Alicia Ambrosio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Madrid. Having been working at World Youth Day since January, I just want to say welcome. It's so good to see you all here having a great time. So, without further ado, though, let's go on with this panel. I'd like to call up our panelists who are here to share their insights about faith in the world of entertainment. So, if I could have my panelists join me. And let's welcome them with a warm round of applause. I see fans. Wonderful. Well, I say let's just start. Let's just jump right into this. I'd like to call up our first panelist. Matt Marsden is a British actor and singer, and he's quickly making his way in America. He began his career in the UK and rose to stardom from his role on the long-running series Coronation Street. Canadians, where are you? You all know that series. Let's cheer. He's also worked on many feature films since moving to the US, including Black Hawk Down, Helen of Troy, and I believe it was Rambo. Please welcome Matt Marsden.
Wow, how awesome is this? Bunch of young Catholics in Madrid. Fantastic. Good afternoon. I've got to tell you, it's really inspiring for me to see you here because you guys are already so much further along than I was when I was your age in your faith, and that is really inspiring to me. So I want to thank you all for being here. It's amazing though, because I went down for breakfast this morning and I picked up the newspaper and I started reading, and all I could read about was the 5,000 protesters that were here protesting the Pope coming. Didn't say a word about the 1.5 million Catholics here to celebrate our faith. Now that to me is news. I don't know, I thought that was pretty fantastic. But here's the thing, it's the same thing in Hollywood. You don't see the headlines, A-list Hollywood actor goes to church, spends the day with his family, prays, and goes to bed. Right? You don't hear that. You just hear all the negativity. But the fact is, there are people out there that do that. But you just don't hear about them. I know of many, many actors, whether they be Catholic or Jewish or even atheists, that live their lives in a very responsible way. I know actors that donate thousands and thousands of dollars to good causes, but you just don't hear about it because it's not news. So a lot of people think that that is just the way Hollywood is, and that's a really bad thing because it perpetuates and goes all around the world that this is the way Hollywood is, and a lot of people look up to actors like that and they say, well, this is the way we have to be, this is the way we should be, but it's not. You know the phrase, the squeaky wheel gets the oil? Well, that's it. Now, who here likes film? Anybody heard of a character called Rocky Balboa? Okay. Well, when I was growing up, I loved Rocky. I remember watching him, you know, in the fights and getting punched with Apollo Creed and them both falling down at the same time in slow motion. It was awesome. But what it taught me, even watching the film as a young man, was that all I had to do was work hard and I could get where I wanted to. Remember, before he fought, he would always get down and bless himself. It doesn't mean when you make movies that you have to make movies about the saints or about priests or about this or that. It's just these little things that we need to watch and get inspired by. And things have gone so far now that we can't even get those in the films. We don't even see movies like that that are inspiring. And when one comes along, it does phenomenally well, like The Blind Side, which was an amazing movie, won Oscars. Yeah, it took tons at the box office, and everyone in Hollywood is like, wow, a movie with a good message did well. People really want to see that? And then you don't hear about those things again for the next 5 years until another one comes out and does phenomenally well. And let me tell you, it's not because there's a lack of scripts out there, because there are tons and tons of scripts out there that are really great. It's the fact that they're just not getting made. And we've got to pull together, and you guys as well, youngsters, you've got to get involved as well in the film industry. I get a lot of people say to me, like, why are you in Hollywood? Isn't it a terrible place? Well, what's the option? Walk away from it and us not have a voice? We all need to get in there, whether you're screenwriters, actors, directors, and become a part of it and stand up and fight. Right now, it's not even a fight to talk about our faith. It's just a fight to have good role models in the movies that aren't broken, that aren't, doing bad things. It seems that we celebrate that, and we've got to take that back. Because cinema is a really unique medium. It's the only place where we can sit in a darkened room for 2 hours and be focused. I mean, I'm sure there's a few people out here that are texting someone right now, or they're falling asleep, or they're on the phone to someone going, there's this British guy, he's really boring. Right? But when you're in the cinema, you don't get that. You're just focused. And that's really, really unique. Not even television shows have that kind of reach because, again, you'll be answering the phone, the coffee, you want to go and get a coffee or, whatever. And so cinema is a really unique medium to affect people and to make them emote. So it really is unique. And people say to me as well, is Hollywood difficult? Of course, it is difficult. But is your life difficult? People say, you must have temptations. Do you guys have temptations? It doesn't matter whether you work in a bank or whether you're in a Hollywood movie. It doesn't matter. It's all the same. Of course, we have different choices to make with the movies that we take. And let me tell you, as actors, it's really, really tough to choose those movies and do the ones that you really want to do because they're just not getting made. And the people that make the decisions, they have a different agenda than what we would like. And like I said, when one gets made, like you got Sandra Bullock who stands up and she says, I want to get this movie made, it gets made. So it's up to you guys to get out there and help us. I remember when I was younger, people saying, you're the future. I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, future, whatever. But you are, and the fact that you're here means you're engaged already. And that is fantastic, and it's really inspiring to me. Because you are the next generation of filmmakers that can change the world. Because movies do influence the culture, and we are losing the culture war right now. It's really difficult, if parents out there, it's really difficult to try and teach your kids to be one way, and then they go and see a movie or they watch a television show and it's in complete contrast to what you're trying to tell them. So it's important for us to win that culture war and to be involved in Hollywood. We really do need people to participate. And the other thing is, the thing that drives me crazy, we're so grateful when someone comes out with a movie with a positive message. We go, oh, it's brilliant. It doesn't matter that the acting is terrible. It doesn't matter that the scenery wobbles, you know, and it's really bad. Yes, it does. It does. Michelangelo didn't say, I'll just draw a few stick men on that. Yeah, there you go. That's okay. That'll do. We are called to be excellent in our art. And anything less than that is a disservice to our Lord, really. The biggest danger we have in the media is mediocrity. And I think all the time I try my best. I always try my best and reach for those heights. Because everyone else, the other side, the other people, they're trying their best because they know. They know what we're up against. So please do not accept mediocrity. Call on filmmakers to be the best, because as Catholics, we have the most amazing history of art, and this is this millennia's art. It's this millennia's art form. Okay? And we are doing the people that went before us disservice if we do not demand excellence from our filmmakers, from our writers. All you've got to do is look at The Passion. Right? Every time I watch that, I'll come 10 minutes in and I'm crying. But it moves you, and it's powerful. And Mel Gibson set the standard. And that's where we've got to reach. And I am an actor, so I could be up here for an hour or so talking about myself. So thank you very much for listening. God bless.
I think I'm going to write those words down. Demand excellence. Our next panelist, you may not know her face, but I guarantee you know her voice. Dana Scallon is an international recording artist. She is one of Ireland's most successful entertainers, enjoying acclaim for best-selling recordings, top-rated television performances, and major concerts both in Ireland and internationally. And the reason you all know her voice is because her song, We Are One Body, was the theme song for the 1993 World Youth Day in Denver. I think some of us are probably... Yeah. Her albums, The Rosary and The Healing Rosaries, are among more than 30 singles and 30 albums that have become worldwide hits. In spring of 2004, Dana became the first woman to be awarded the highly acclaimed San Benedetto Award for her outstanding work in defending life and the family. Dana has remained close to her Irish roots, working tirelessly for peace, Christian family values, and respect for life as a spokesperson for the Christian family and the pro-life movement. So please, a warm round of applause for Dana Scallon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's just wonderful to be with you. If you don't mind, a very special hello to the Irish who are here. And my son told me I have to say hello to Father Conor McDonough, who went to college with him, went to school with him. So I did it, okay? And I have witnesses that I did it, okay? I was asked to share with you how I came more into, I suppose, a ministry in the Catholic Church. Well, I started out in a very musical family, and I know we live and breathe music for most of our lives. And you in particular, I guess you listen to music practically all the time because you have it so easily available on iPods or whatever. But I was 18. How many of you are 18? Okay. I was chosen to represent my country of Ireland in the Eurovision Song Contest. Now, those of you from European countries will know this competition, and those of you who don't, it is the equivalent of America's Got Talent, but on a European-wide basis for songwriters and singers. And at 18, still at school, I became the first winner of the Eurovision Song Contest for Ireland. So overnight, I had a #1 record practically all over Europe and as far away as Australia and New Zealand. I was very typical of the young Catholic girls of my town. I had come through a crisis of faith when I was 16. I woke up one morning and the thought hit me that there was no God, that God was like a big piece of putty in the sky. You know what putty is? You fix windows with it and whatnot. In other words, he was an escape. And for a year, I was grappling with this alone. I felt I couldn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my parents. I kept going to Mass because my mother would have killed me if I didn't, but, you know, I went. And then we had a school retreat where a priest realized there was something really troubling me. And he said that if what I believed was true, that God was just an escape from the difficulties of life, then to live the Christian life must be the easiest road. And he said, no, it will be the most challenging, but the most fulfilling road you will ever take. And so I began just thinking, oh, I never thought of that. So when I won Eurovision 2 years later, I was still on this little walk, an adult walk towards God. And I know that many of you are on that walk where you feel sometimes very close and sometimes you feel very apart from Him, 1 step forward and 10 steps back. So as an overnight success, a pop star, I found that the people who treated me as a normal human being, the fact that I was a Catholic, the fact that I wanted to go to Mass the day after winning Eurovision, was regarded as kind of quaint, a little unusual. But it was the Christians in entertainment, and they were not all Catholic, the Christians in entertainment who treated me like a normal human being, who said they would pray for me, and who became my friends. This is terribly important that we realize we cannot make this journey alone. We need support around us, people who understand the struggle it sometimes is to live our Christian life, to live our Catholic faith. And so my journey went on. I fell in love with a man who fell in love with Jesus about 2 years after I met him. And I was so shocked. He wrote to me and said he loved me enough to risk our friendship, to tell me how much Jesus loved me. And you know, it wasn't that he was some kind of a wild person. He was what I'd call a normal Irish Catholic man. He went to Mass, he lived a good life, but he didn't really talk on a daily basis about Jesus in that way. As a matter of fact, I compared his signature to an old letter just to make sure it was him. But he led me very gently, very gently. He never pushed me. So it wasn't until my middle 20s that, I was an independent career woman. I had a career that I loved. I didn't have ambitions to be married. I wanted sometime in the future, yes. But I didn't have a burning ambition to be married and have children at that time. And then I had a major crisis with my voice. I had a cancer scare. I had a growth on one of my vocal cords. The operation to correct that, to remove the growth, left me without a voice at all. I had to learn to speak. I had to learn to sing. And it took me 5 years to get back to normal singing. If I look back on that experience, I thank God for it. And you will face many trials and difficulties. My husband taught me a wonderful thing. He said, when things are really bad, when things are really tough, just stop and say, thank you for this difficulty, God. Thank you. Thank you for the problems in my family. Thank you for the difficulty in my life. Thank you for the illness that I have. Whatever it is, just say thank you. Because he brings all things to good. And I came out of that stage in my career with a new understanding of myself, of my faith, and of my relationships. And that was when Pope John Paul II came to Ireland with his wonderful motto, Totus Tuus, totally yours. And Damien and I wrote a song inspired by the motto. That song led us into recording Christian lyrics, music with Christian lyric, because I had recorded other people's words, but it's not the same as your own. And I did then, and I still do. I do secular work and I do religious work. And there is a growing animosity to the Catholic faith. There is a growing animosity to the Christian beliefs that are held by the majority of people in my country and in Europe. It is going to be a challenging time because we're anti-cultural at the moment. We're not, can't get the expression, what's that expression? Thank you, I knew that. Countercultural. We are countercultural. But you know something? To see you all here is inspiring because you have the strength, you have the faith to protect what is being eroded daily. As Matthew said, you see it in the reporting on this World Youth Day. You will be attuned to how it is reported. Be part of the industry. Be part of the media industry. Be there and witness there. And I have so much more I could say, but for sure, all I can say is I thank God for you, and I thank you for the inspiration you are, and I look forward to you going into this media and transforming it. Thank you.
Our next panelist is Father Robert Barron. He is an acclaimed author, speaker, and theologian. He was ordained. Would you like me to say the year?
Say it, sure.
He was ordained in 1986. Father Barron is the Francis Cardinal George Professor of Faith and Culture at the University of St. Mary of the Lake Mundelein Seminary near Chicago. Chicago's in the house. Where he's taught systematic theology. His global nonprofit media ministry called Word on Fire. Who's heard of Word on Fire? Okay, I thought so. Reaches millions of people by utilizing advanced and emerging technologies to draw people into or back to the faith. Father Barron is the first priest to have a national show on secular television. Please welcome Father Robert Barron.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to all of you. I would just echo the first two speakers in saying what a joy it is to be here. It's my first World Youth Day, and what an uplift for my own faith and my own sense of church, so thank you for that. As some of you might know, I have this ministry on the internet where I do commentary on culture. So I talk about books and what's in the news and so on. But one of my favorite things to do is to talk about movies. Because I know the way into the hearts of many people, especially young people, is through music and through film. Now, sometimes you watch a movie and you say, this thing is god-awful. I don't mean from a technical standpoint, I mean from a moral or spiritual standpoint. So sometimes I say in my commentaries, this movie is terrible and advocates values that run totally contrary to our own approach. Watch, or I should say don't watch, a movie like 2012, for example. You'll see a movie that stands very much against what we're about. So I think at times we do, as a church, have to stand athwart the culture. We have to stand over and against it, and we have to point out where it's become problematic. But sometimes I just delight in seeing, growing up like a flower in the most unexpected place, our values, our ideas, our perspectives. As I say, sometimes in very surprising ways, in a movie you just would never expect it, suddenly there is the Christian thing. So let me give you one example of this, then I'll just say a few simple things, kind of extrapolating from that. Among my favorite filmmakers today are the Coen brothers. You know, Fargo and Raising Arizona, movies like that. Well, their most recent movie was a remake of True Grit, the movie from 1969 with John Wayne. How many saw the recent True Grit? Well, I went to see it because I love the style of the Coen brothers, but man, was I surprised by the spiritual power of it. I'll just rehearse a little tiny bit of the story to make the point. It's about this young woman, Maddie Ross, who's 14 years old. Her father's been brutally slain in cold blood by a terrible man named Tom Chaney. Maddie Ross is now set to get this man. And she is one tough cookie. I mean, Maddie is smart, she is determined, she is willful, and she is going to get her man. So she seeks out the toughest marshal she can find. She asks around, and someone says, well, Rooster Cogburn is the man with true grit. You should get him. So she finds Rooster Cogburn, played by Jeff Bridges. And with Rooster Cogburn, she sets out into Indian country to track down Tom Chaney. As she goes about this work in the most relentless, purposeful way, she is questing for justice. And yes, indeed, she is looking for justice. The bodies begin to pile up. The number of people who are killed in her single-minded effort to get Tom Chaney. At the climax of the movie, she's been captured by Tom Chaney's gang, but she manages to get the pistol. At the climax of the movie, she shoots Tom Chaney to death. But in the very act of shooting him, the recoil from the gun is such that she's kicked back into a pit, and she falls into a pit with snakes in it. And there she is, helpless, and then her hand is bitten by a rattlesnake. At this point, Rooster Cogburn reappears, and he comes down into the pit, and he draws her up. First, he draws some of the venom out of the wound, and then brings her up out of the pit. He knows he's got to get her very quickly to a doctor. So he puts her on his horse, and the two of them begin to ride, and they ride, and they ride. They ride even through the night until the horse gives out underneath them. At which point, Rooster picks her up in his two strong arms, and he begins to run with her to the doctor's office. He collapses in exhaustion 100 yards from the doctor's office. The doctor sees her, takes her in. We now flash forward, the very end of the movie. We flash forward about 25 years, and we see Maddie Ross. She obviously survived. But Maddie is a very prim and very severe and very angry middle-aged woman. The camera then pulls back, and we see she only has one arm. The doctor was able to save her life, but he couldn't save her arm. He had to amputate it. So there she stands with one arm, and the movie ends. At which point we hear on the soundtrack that beautiful old spiritual, "The Lord will hold me in his everlasting arms." And you start thinking, arms, arms in this movie. The everlasting arms of God. And think then of the arms of Rooster Cogburn that carried Maddie all the way to the doctor. And then think of her one arm at the end. God is characterized by justice, yes indeed. And Maddie Ross was filled with God's justice. But God is not just justice. God is also mercy. Can you see in Rooster Cogburn, who is a man of justice? Yes, he's a federal marshal. He's trying to get his man. But what becomes so clear, especially at the end of the movie, is that Rooster is also a man of great mercy. We are carried in the two arms of God's justice and God's mercy. The trouble with Maddie was she had just the one arm of justice. We then recall something. The movie begins with a little voiceover from Maddie Ross, and she says, "The only thing in life that's free is the grace of God." You see what she was doing? She was trying to make Tom Chaney pay. She was ordered to justice. She forgot that message about the grace of God. Now, what I loved about that movie, I wasn't expecting theology at all. I was expecting a good cowboy movie. And I had seen the old John Wayne film when I was just a kid. But what you saw springing up out of that Coen Brothers movie was a very powerful meditation upon God's grace and upon being borne up in the everlasting arms of God's mercy and God's justice. Now, friends, here's my point. That's one example of finding a very deeply biblical and very deeply Christian message in a place we might not expect, and in a pretty gritty movie. People say to me sometimes when they see my YouTube commentaries, they'll say, "Father, how could you watch these movies? I mean, the Coen Brothers, sex and violence and all sorts of bad things. How could you watch those, Father?" Well, I know a book that has adultery and murder and rape and incest and all kinds of stuff in it. It's called the Bible. My point is, we have to distinguish between a movie, let's say, that is advocating bad things, and a movie or a book that is showing bad things. Because sometimes what a movie does very effectively is it shows the human condition in its glory and in its grittiness. And see, we can't afford to be too sort of prim and puritanical. We Christians who know that we're made in the image and likeness of God and who know that we are all marked by original sin, we should not be surprised at movies that show the Christian life. And we shouldn't be too squeamish about that and should be willing to notice and celebrate these values. And also, I'll end with this, all you out there who might aspire one day to be writers and critics or filmmakers, is that we don't have to be simply kitschy or cutesy in the way we make our art. We can do it with great integrity and even a little true grit and allow the message of the church to come through. God bless you all, and thanks.
Thank you, Father Barron. Our next panelist is Clarence Gilliard. As an actor, director, and producer, Clarence Gilliard has worked in television and film for more than 25 years. He's had prominent roles in feature films such as Top Gun and Die Hard. After working 13 years straight as the co-star on two successful television series, Matlock and Walker, Texas Ranger, he took a professional sabbatical and earned his Master of Fine Arts in Theater Performance. He now teaches acting at the University of Las Vegas, Nevada, and works professionally not only in television and film, but also in theater. Mr. Gilliard is an outspoken witness of his Catholic faith. He was a member of the U.S. Bishops' Communication Committee, and he currently serves on the board of directors for Holy Cross Family Ministries. So please, a warm round of applause for Clarence Gilliard.
I'd like to make a warm shout out to my Irish Catholic friends from my Irish Catholic blood inside of me, of course. My name is Clarence Gilliard, and I'm representing Holy Cross Family Ministries. So a lot of you have seen me with my cowboy hat up front, and a lot of you have taken pictures with me, which is why I decided to steal one of you, okay? Okay, today I'm hawking some C's. Some 4 C's. I'm hawking Christ and His church. I'm hawking courage, and I'm selling creativity. I'm selling a book today. Actually, I'm not selling it, but I want to remind you about a book by John Paul II. Okay? It's called A Letter to the Artists. And in the Jubilee year, JP2 wrote a book for us. And he told us that we were created in the image of God in His creativity. It's difficult for some of us to imagine ourselves doing God's work as an actor or an artist, but the fact is that is, like my colleagues know, that's part of the front lines of the war, okay? So I want you to find this book, and I want you to read it, okay? I'm a convert to the faith, and it's about 13 years since I've been in the church. And I came into the church actually when I was on Walker, Texas Ranger, and I was very, very prodigal. I was living the life of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And a little story. I remember one time I was on the streets of Paris, and I was looking because I had lost my way. I had lost my way. And I was on a corner, and I stopped the guy, and he was speaking English, and I asked him if he knew the way to a place. I think I was going to the Pompidou. And he said, sure. And he started to tell me how to get there. And he was telling me to go down this way, and that, blah, 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 blah. And I was doing what I did in my sex, drugs, and rock and roll period in Hollywood. I really wasn't listening to him. I wasn't listening to the truth. I wasn't listening to direction. And the guy stopped. And he says, you're not listening to me. Forget it. And he left me on the corner. He left me there. Right? Let's shoot ahead to, I'm in Dallas, Texas, in the middle of shooting a very successful television series. And my wife and my 2 kids at the time came out to see me in Dallas, Texas, and my wife found out that I was having an affair. She got on a plane, she took the kids, and she left me. She left me. So, through the process of healing and counseling, I met a man and his wife who invited me to the Catholic Church on a Sunday afternoon. And I said, sure, I'll go. And I went in, and people were on their knees. And they were praying. And I got on my knees in that Mass, and I realized in that particular Mass that that was the position that I needed to be in. That was where my relationship with the Creator of my life needed to be. I didn't know about the Eucharist. I didn't know that Jesus was present in the Eucharist at the time, and that was also influencing me. And that was the Sunday that my life, I guess you would say, turned around. So shoot ahead, I went through the RCIA program in the United States, and I came into the Catholic Church on Christmas Eve, which is my birthday, okay, which actually at midnight Mass. So I actually came in on Christmas Day, which is Jesus' birthday. So I'm very proud of that. But before I went to my confirmation Mass, I actually went to Mass early in the morning. And the title of the homily was, "A Self-Made Man is a Poorly Made Man." Right? A self-made man is a very poorly made man. And I want you to remember that if you come up and you take a picture with me, you're not taking a picture with me. You're taking a picture with somebody whose life was saved by Jesus Christ. I still work in television film, but I teach, as she said, I teach at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I teach in the film school and in the theater school. I teach acting, and I try to sneak some of the Catholic faith in. It's a state school. I try to slide it in there. And right now we are a family, Gilliards, of 5 children. Those 2 kids that were with me when my wife left me are still with me now, okay? My son, 21, Paul, is a United States Marine. My daughter is a sophomore in college with me. And then I have, because I realized through the faith that I was called to more than just being an artist in film and television, but to be an artist in my life as a husband and an artist in my life as a father. And so we have Maximilian, who is 8, Peter, who is 4, and we have Gabrielle, who is 19 months. The last thing I want to leave you with is, since I only have 20 minutes more, I have 20 minutes more? Oh, no, I'm just joking. The last thing I want to leave you with is something that was given to me by the Holy Spirit. Once I came into the faith, I was really conflicted inside my heart about being a Hollywood star, because our show was very hot in the United States. It still is around the world. And they have these toll booths in Dallas, Texas. And I used to have to go through the toll booth to get to the stage. And when I went through, I realized that I was flying through this toll booth, just throwing money in it. And one night at prayer, the Holy Spirit said to me,
It doesn't matter who I send you to, but I am sending you to these people, so you need to acknowledge that I'm in you. And I was given this message to, instead of say, when people greet me, say, how are you doing? Say, fine, good, bad, sleepy. I was given the gift to say, from now on, in my life, I'm blessed. How are you? So from now on, when you go back to where you live, and we are now brothers and sisters, face to face, I want you to try that. It's a tough thing to do. It's a tough thing to do in the secular world. But when people say, how are you doing? What are you going to say? Ask me how I am. I'm blessed.
Finally, we have Father Willie Raymond. He is a priest from the U.S. province of Holy Cross and a native of Old Town, Maine. Anyone here from Maine? Yeah, there's a few up in the rafters. He was ordained to the priesthood. Can I say it? I always ask about dates. He was ordained to the priesthood in 1971 and has served as vocations director, campus minister, college administrator, pastor, assistant provincial, and provincial superior. He has served 11 years as the national director of family theater productions in Hollywood, as a member of the Holy Cross Family Ministries. I've been working at World Youth Day. My eyesight is going. Sorry. Bear with me. Family Theater was founded by Holy Cross Family Ministries, third time's the charm, in 1947 by servant of God, Father Patrick Payton, to evangelize culture through mass media programs that entertain, inspire, and educate the family. So please join me in welcoming Father Willie Raymond. I finally got it right.
Brothers and sisters in Christ, it is a pleasure to be here with you at this World Youth Day 2011, and for me it's the fourth one. I was in Toronto and in Cologne and Sydney, and even participated in a way in the Millennial World Youth Day in Rome, because I happened to be in Rome, but I was unfamiliar really with World Youth Day, and I got on a train on a metro car, and it was filled with young people. We could just barely fit in, and these young people were from Poland and Latin America and Italy, and they were all singing one song together in English, and the song was "I'm Singing in the Rain," and they had a leader that would say the words, and then they would all sing it after him, and then he would say stop, and then he'd go on to the next line. It was the funniest thing that I had ever heard. But at that time, I was trying to figure what the next step was in my vocation as a Holy Cross priest, and my provincial had asked me to think about going out to family theater, and I think that was a moment that convinced me that all these young people from different countries were singing tune from a 50-year-old film that was made in Hollywood back in the day, and that was still influencing them all these years after. And then I'd like to say just a couple of things about the panelists that are here. Matthew Marsden is a very good friend. I had the pleasure of witnessing his marriage in Malta. He married a wonderful woman, native of Malta, named Nadine, and he has a great film career under his belt already. He didn't mention my favorite film of his, which is Anacondas, The Hunt for Red Orchids, or whatever it is. He hates that, but he's got a strong fan base with that film. he has all of his priorities in order. God is first with him, and then his wife Nadine and the children and his family, and it goes on from there. And his career is somewhere down the line, but he takes it very seriously. And Donna sang with Father Patrick Payton, who's a servant of God and a candidate for sainthood, and the priest who made famous around the world. And I want you to complete this sentence: the family that prays together. Good for you. That came from Family Theater in Hollywood with Father Payton. And Father Bob Barron, it's the first time I meet him, but every Saturday morning I listen to him. I listen to his homily for that weekend. He is among the best theologians and preachers and now filmmakers in the country. So it's an honor to be with him. And I've only seen a part of the Catholicism project, but you will have the word on fire in your belly, I think, once you get a chance to see that. It's called the Catholicism Project. And Clarence Gilliard is a great friend of mine. And once we were walking along in Santa Monica, and he said, he said to me, I'd like to speak to you about spiritual direction. And I said, Clarence, I already have a spiritual director. It's true. But he's a good friend, and he is one of the respected great warriors of our faith. He's a warrior because he loves this faith so much. If you ever walk into a church with him, it's a little embarrassing because he kneels down and kisses the floor of the church out of respect and love for this faith. I'd like to share with you a quote from 83 years ago. This is from Miles Connolly, who was invited by President Kennedy's father, Joe Kennedy, to come to Hollywood because Joe had read some of the columns that Miles Connolly had written in Boston, and he invited him to come to Hollywood, where Mr. Kennedy had purchased and set up the RKO film studio. And that's a chapter of the Kennedy clan that's not very well known, but he was one of the pioneers, that Mr. Kennedy, in Hollywood. And he invited Miles Connolly in part because of this quote, 1928, so 83 years ago, and it's about the value and the power of film. If you want to reach the masses, you can reach them through pictures. These new children can be bent and molded as they sit in the dark and wrapped before the magic of the mobile screen. There in the dark, they can be lifted out of their daily servitude. There they can be raised high above their stone and steel environment. There they can be brought to the high places and shown the deeps beyond the hard horizon. There they can be taught to be superior to the great magnificent monsters that are their creations. There they can be taught to love this terrible new civilization, because there they can be taught to look upon it as their child and not as their master. Here then is a mission for any agency. Here is a destiny for an art second to none in history, for it is given to the motion picture to save the soul of a civilization. The last phrase again, it is given to the motion picture to save the soul of a civilization. Film is so powerful all around the world in shaping our popular culture. I was down about 25 years ago visiting with our missions in Peru, and we're on the edge of Lake Titicaca, high in the highlands of Peru. And these children were talking with us, and through an interpreter, they said, "Do you know Arnold Schwarzenegger?" And I had to say, "No, I don't." And they said, "Well, we love Conan the Barbarian and all of." They are in that remotest part of the world. They knew about Conan the Barbarian and Arnold Schwarzenegger. We cannot overestimate the power of film to shape our popular culture, and just in terms of our faith and affecting the culture. When I look around at all of the missions that are attracting young people all around the world, foreign missions within our cities, going to Washington and making a change, I look at Hollywood, where I work and live, right on Sunset Boulevard, and I do not think that there is a more important place for the Catholic Church to be present and to be supporting people like Matthew Marsden and Clarence Gilliard and Jim Caviezel and all of these other actors who are not afraid to stand up and say, "I'm a Catholic, I'm proud of it, and in my list of priorities, my faith in God and the church come first." So my mission in Hollywood is really one of supporting them. And finally, I would just ask for you, because I believe that the single most important thing that we can do for Hollywood is to pray for it. I would ask every single one of you if you would pray for them, pray for Hollywood, and pray for me. Pray for Family Theater. It's right on Sunset Boulevard in the middle of Hollywood, and it is the spiritual home for Catholics in Hollywood. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Now the real fun begins. I get to ask questions. So, I haven't done this in a while. My day job is as a reporter, and I've been working at World Youth Day, so I get to grill people with my 20 questions. My first question, simple but difficult. So, what came up a few times was about the culture that's out there, the culture that we need to infiltrate, basically, with our own values. How do we do that? How do we take back the culture?
How do we take back the culture? I think we first of all have to be aware that there's a problem. And many people are so busy living their lives, trying to put a roof over their children's heads and food on the table, it's hard to appreciate the difficulties out there. We are chosen to see the difficulties out there. I think what Father asked for, prayer, is essential to be able to do anything. Being present in that culture, forming friendships with people who work in that culture, who perhaps have a preconceived idea of what a Catholic is, of what a Christian is. And that demands of us what was already spoken of here, this justice but mercy. We have to be Christ to the people we meet in that culture. Otherwise, we're just using and abusing them as they use and abuse us. So definitely prayer, definitely being present in the different areas where there's a huge problem. Writers, media. Please, anyone who's interested in writing scripts for soaps, go for it, because they shape the culture in people's living rooms. They don't even pay for a ticket to go and see it. So I don't want to take too much time, but that's my initial thoughts.
Just that If I just a couple of thoughts. My Archbishop, Cardinal Francis George of Chicago, has always said, all right, Cardinal George, that you can't evangelize a culture that you don't love. If you simply stand against the culture, you're down on the culture, after a while the culture stops listening. So part of the approach is to love the culture. And I think what I've tried to do, as I talked about, is to find points of contact in the culture, find beautiful things that are popping up there. The second observation is we have to realize the, I still think, unrealized dream of Vatican II, which is the universal call to holiness. Vatican II wants great Catholic teachers, great Catholic politicians, great Catholic business leaders, great Catholic writers, script writers, filmmakers, and not just people who are incidentally Catholic, but whose Catholicism invades the whole of their cultural contribution. That's where you come in. It's not just for a few cultural elites. It's for all of you now to engage the culture, to invade the culture, and be great Catholics. That, I think, was the call of Vatican II, and that was John Paul II's vision.
I'd like to talk about things on a practical level, and the first thing I'd say is investment, because it's an amazing phenomenon when people do Christian movies or Catholic movies, right? You'll get some individual who's a very high net worth individual who will say, I'm going to put $20 million into this movie and I'm going to make it. It doesn't matter, I've got no experience in making movies. It doesn't matter. I'd like to say to him, well, do you go up to your doctor and say to him, you know what, I'm paying for this brain surgery, so I'm going to do it myself because I'm paying for it? You know, it's kind of like American Idol. We've all watched like Pop Idol or American Idol, right? Everyone thinks they can sing, right? And we're all there going, you can't sing. And they're dragged out and they're like, no, I can. No, you don't get it. You don't understand. Well, it's the same way in movies. So what has happened in Hollywood is a lot of high net worth individuals have come in. They've made movies that are really, really bad and they never get distributed. So for me, I know there's a lot of Catholics out there. I mean, look at Mel Gibson had to find his own money for The Passion. And you look and you go, it's the Passion of the Christ. It's about Jesus. It's going to make a ton of money. But he still couldn't get the money. So for me, it's intelligent investment in movies and looking for excellence again. Not saying, oh, well, because you're a Catholic, I'm going to let you direct it. You get a Ridley Scott or Steven Spielberg. And you get the best actors and you get Gary Oldman. So that's for me, on a practical level, how we can influence culture in a positive way, because we're never going to do it unless there is investment in film from Catholics.
Maybe a small note would be for those, whatever place you're called to in life, to be responsible for the formation of those that are younger than you. Also, in exposing them to the culture, to the arts, to good music, because what you eat is what you are. Expose young children. Fill them with good art and leave the noise out of their lives.
This will be very brief too. The word culture has the word cult as the root in it, and it's a word for venerating or worshiping, almost worshiping the cult of the saints. And right now in Hollywood, there's a cult of celebrity, and people come very close to worshiping Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie and people like that. And actually, that's one of the big obstacles, I think, to shaping culture, popular culture, in a more positive and noble way. So getting away from the cult of celebrity and looking at the values that underlie our society that are good and that make it a society that is healthy for families and for individuals to come into their true selves.
Thank you. That leads me to my next question. So what makes a movie a Catholic movie if it's not necessarily having a Catholic director or a Catholic writer? Who would like to start?
I get that one. No, it's a good question, and it doesn't mean the movie has to be about John Paul II or has to be about the praying of the rosary, or it doesn't have to be explicitly. I think a movie that speaks of God in an incarnational way is Catholic in spirit, that speaks of God appearing within time and space and history, has a Catholic substance, if you want. So I don't think it has to be explicitly about, Catholic themes. It can be an implicit presence of Catholicism. I mean, talk about sacramentality. A film can be sacramental in that sense if it speaks of the unconditioned love or goodness or justice or truth. That's why a movie like True Grit, I think, does speak very deeply of at least biblical themes. A biblical vision of life comes through. So I think that's important to know, but you don't have to be explicit in your Catholicism to make a Catholic film. And that's important, I think, for Catholic filmmakers. I'll say one quick word about one of my heroes, Flannery O'Connor, the greatest Catholic fiction writer of the last century. And good, I'm glad you like Flannery O'Connor. You read a lot of her stories and you say, ay, ay, ay. I mean, the violence and the sort of movies are stories that seem completely secular but are filled with the Catholic spirit. So that's how an artist can bring Catholicism to bear in a subtle, artistic way.
On the way to Father Woolley, if you remember what Archbishop Dolan said, he said, we don't impose, we propose, right? And so films and media that propose a culture of value, look at that as a Catholic art form.
I would just add that a lot of the deeply rich Catholic films in Hollywood were so because of the directors. And you look at the great directors in classic Hollywood: John Ford, Frank Capra, Alfred Hitchcock, Scorsese. Even he might be a lapsed Catholic, but he still has the Catholic imagination. And A Wonderful Life, Frank Capra's film, is deeply Catholic without being explicitly so, and it just talks about the nobility of one human life and how that can make a difference in a whole town.
Did you have something to add?
I'd like to comment on what Father said earlier. There's this idea that if you're going to make a Catholic movie, it has to be like The Sound of Music, or about, which is a great movie, by the way, I love it, but, right, I love The Sound of Music. But it's right now where it's such a point in the culture. Like, for example, if you look at where we came from, big band music to rap these days, if you tried to turn back time, this was done incrementally. And what we're kind of doing is we're trying to turn back time to the 50s and the way that the movies were then, like The Bells of St. Mary's or whatever. It's impossible. You can't do it. Right now, we've just getting a positive message across in a movie is a victory for us. So True Grit is a great example, actually. It drives me crazy when I say screenwriters write movies. Oh, we've got to write a movie about a saint. Well, how about writing a movie about a father that does the right thing? Like with Rocky, bending down and blessing himself. That's what we want to see, right? How many times you look and you go, my dad's a hero, or my mother's a hero, or, we've got to look for positive role models and have those in movies. That's the point we're at right now. And then we can incrementally and gradually bring it back and do The Sound of Music.
Did you have something to add? Would you like to add something to that?
I think that for Catholic people going to the movies, there are certain themes that can be developed in a movie. For many Catholics, we're a big wide church, and there are many struggling with teachings in the church on pro-life, on the attitude to people who are gay. And I think that within the Catholic setting or the direction of a movie, I think it would be helpful and supportive to be able to work through those situations with a positive Catholic response, remembering that we're not talking about solely Catholic issues. These are issues that unite many churches together, and so perhaps we can find a common way of dealing with these themes, not just to entertain, but also, as it says, to raise people as they sit in the dark, to raise them and to encourage them and strengthen them.
Thank you. So, speaking of good movies and movies with positive messages, we have a special guest who's going to tell us about one of these movies. I have, waiting to join us, the man who made this Love and Life site possible, the Supreme Knight of the Knights of Columbus, Mr. Carl Anderson, and I'd like to invite him to join us on stage.
Thank you very much, Alicia. Look, we have something very special for you now. We have a sneak preview of a fantastic new movie that you're going to be seeing in the theaters in a few months. We've been talking about what makes a great Catholic movie. I think there are three parts. A Catholic movie shows us something beautiful, moral beauty. It expresses some deep human truth, and it inspires us to move beyond ourselves, to do something for others. This movie does all three things in a fantastic way. It tells the story of the persecution of the Catholic Church during the 1920s in Mexico. Viva Mexico, huh? This was a time when hundreds of churches were closed, thousands of priests were persecuted, hundreds were killed, and men and women had to stand up and defend the church. It's also the story about a young boy who was one of the most courageous Catholics in our century, who was tortured and finally brutally murdered for the faith. Why bring this story of a boy who was beatified by Benedict XVI just several years ago in Mexico? Because it's really the same story as World Youth Day. And the story of World Youth Day is that courage, integrity, faith is not a matter of age. Not a matter of age. It's a matter of character. It's a matter of integrity. And each of you here can stand up with character and integrity. And so now I want you to see this special exhibit, this special premiere of Cristiada. And to introduce it a little bit more is the star of the movie, Andy Garcia, who also performs with Peter O'Toole and Eva Longoria. And so I hope you enjoy this.
Saludos, greetings, and good morning. I wanted to speak to you about a new film I'm in, a film that I'm very excited about, and I think you will be too. It is called Cristiada, and it tells the story of the struggle of religious freedom during the persecution of the church in Mexico in the 1920s. And this movie is a perfect opportunity to make this important history known to millions through the silver screen. I wasn't aware really of the Cristero Wars in Mexico, and when I read the material and did some research on it, I found it to be a very captivating subject matter and one that needed to be brought attention to. The first stimulus for me as an actor was the notion of the quest for absolute freedom, which obviously includes religious freedom. And this is a very noble cause that there's been a struggle with nations and throughout the course of history. And this is something that was easily to support and to get behind. Certainly, my own upbringing as a Catholic had certain influences in that. Also coming from a country that that religious freedom was also curtailed and abolished during the Cuban Revolution, I was very sensitive also to that reality and those struggles. Many years, and it was a really glorifying experience really for me to lead an army that represents such a noble cause. General Gorostieta was a very famous general that fought with Huerta against Zapata, and was very decorated. He was brought upon to lead this Cristero army that was a bit disorganized, and they went to this general because of his expertise in tactical warfare. The curious thing is that the general was known as an atheist and was not a religious man. And in our story, we contemplate the idea that General Gorostieta, through the relationship with the Cristeros, and especially with this young boy, Jose, that he has a sort of a religious awakening in a way. And these are themes that are classical themes in history, but also in films. The great poet Jose Martí, in the struggle for the independence of Cuba, talked about when the idea is true and pure, it will always win out. So that's what the movie's about. And I believe in my heart we made a great film. I would hope that everyone is stimulated by the film and would help us in its journey. Without further ado, I'm happy to share with you this preview of this film, Cristiada. Que viva Cristo Rey.
Mexico is under siege. A plot to poison the minds and hearts of our people, to turn them into religious fanatics. This evil, this threat, it will not be tolerated.
You're an army fighting for God and for the church. We will fight with honor and dignity.
In the United States, we've been following your war with the Catholic Church.
I would hardly call it a war.
There is a time for peace, a time for war.
Even if I were younger, I would not fight.
You cannot fight for something you don't believe in.
I believe in freedom. The fate of Mexico, it's in God's hands, not yours or mine. This will be one of the most important battles of our struggle. If you lose this war, we're not going to lose this war.
Why are you here?
We want to be Cristeros.
Cristeros.
Yes.
We are going to send a message that freedom is our lives. And we will defend it or die trying. ¡Que viva Cristo Rey! ¡Que viva Cristo Rey!
Wow, that was a special treat. And with that, our panel on faith and entertainment comes to an end, just in time for a proper Madrilenian lunch hour. Have you all noticed the late lunch hour in Madrid? Yeah. I'd like to thank all our panelists for joining us, for sharing your thoughts and your insights with us. It was a pleasure to be here with you. And I'd like to thank you for being here, for joining us for this conversation today. Have a wonderful World Youth Day and see you soon.